Oren Zamir, the man, the myth, the legend. Here we are. I met you 10 years ago, and you were a dominant salesman figure who ran like 100 of us, 150 sales people, which have big egos, and absolutely crushed it. You're very memorable. Even my father says this man is going to have big things, which true. That's what he said. Just when I said I was going to do an interview on you, he's like, oh yeah, you should. But here we are. You just started your own solar energy, but before we get there, I want to hear from the beginning, when you're a younger gentleman in Israel, and how you got here, why you got here, and we're going to go on a little story here, so watch out.
Sure. So I was born in Tel Aviv in Israel, and my
Party town, by the way. Party town.
And my family moved shortly after, actually, to Metula, which is the most northern point in the country. So it's literally on the Lebanese border.
Okay.
Not the greatest times right now, but when I grew up, it was just a part of reality. My wife always seemed to struggle like twice throughout my life, and I'm like, it's only twice we had to go into a bomb shelter, there were missiles and whatnot.
Right.
What was unique, and we're talking a town of 2,000 people, very agricultural savvy. So
what kind of agriculture?
Orchards, lots of apples and cherries, and neat. It was very cool. But luckily, my dad, so my mom's side of the family had the big farms and lots of land. And they just told him, you come and take it, and he refused. He came, from the center of Israel and decided to open a woodworking shop. And people thought he's crazy. And it just the way it worked, my mom is very analytical like me, numbers oriented, and she was always in the municipality and the collection agencies and whatnot. And she ran the business behind closed doors, but growing up, so that's the entrepreneurship, I guess I could say I've seen, but my dad wasn't a successful businessman. I always say it was crazy how he would walk into a house and leave within half an hour, giving someone a quote for a full house renovation, and like a full new kitchen. I'm like, business, you have to be meticulous in your calculations. You do need to know what you're doing, and especially nowadays with technology, there is so much modern data that business efficiency has skyrocketed, and that's what my dad never had. So it was from hand to mouth. And don't get me wrong, we were very blessed. We were raised. I had the quad in Israel. I had they always had nice cars. We had a very nice house.
But was it because of your father's business, or was it because of your mom's side?
Both.
So they worked together in different sectors?
Yeah, Israel is interesting. The black cash side of business is almost larger than the legitimate side.
Really?
Yeah, it's well, taxes, it all starts with how big taxes are, right? You guys have GST 5%, we have VAT at 18%. So anything starts at 18%, and it just, personal income taxes can be 50%. So it's just more common that people like to offer business people, what about this in cash, and just write this, right? It's very common. And I think it allows you to live life in a very unique way, because you have cash you need to spend on obviously things that you wouldn't necessarily spend if the money was in the business. Right. Is it sustainable, right? Like often my dad would have asked me, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that in Canada? I'm like, because I never want to be in that position. I think that, the economy is good, the taxes are fair. If you can just earn properly and honestly, you will end up ahead. You won't need to worry about the one-time audit that might actually now come and say you owe XYZ. But that was my childhood, right? And I lived in, like I said, Metula. The unique thing about Metula, imagine a town of 2,000 Israelis, 6-7 million people. It had a sports complex that was called Canada Center. And Canada Center, which was donated by Canadian Jews. The mayor of Metula had good connections, and it was the only ice hockey rink in the whole country. And, and that's the beginning of the story. When I was 8, so my elementary school had skating class. That's not common. Nowhere in Israel has that, but my elementary school did. And the one time the coach or the instructor didn't show up, he had the hockey coach as the sub.
Gotcha.
I've never even heard of a sport called hockey, just so you understand. Like, it's not big. But as I show up...
In Canada it is.
Woo! I show up,
baby, right?
You know it. And, I show up and this guy, Russian, thick accent, lots of, Soviet Union that immigrated to Israel. And, of course, they love the ice and hockey and whatnot. And he says, you're pretty good at skating. You should come join our hockey team. I'm like, hockey? What's hockey? And he literally says, just show up. You have a full dressing room full of equipment that was donated from Canada, so you don't need to buy anything. You show up, they dress you with this equipment, and off you go. And at 8 years old, I got into hockey. And at the time, I was in soccer, basketball, swimming. I was very active.
So you were like a premium athlete, or?
I was okay. I was definitely an active. I was always a big boy. It's funny, I used to get bullied through my youth pretty hard. I had a big head, but the body only followed years later. And, it was to an extreme at times, right? It was tough. I think it actually allowed me to become who I am strengths-wise. Because, there were many times that I would come home crying and, how does a parent deal with it when people are very mean to his children? But hockey,
So you were bullied?
Big time bullied.
Like where they beat you or just verbally?
Yeah, verbally. It was always, the concrete head and the square head and the big head, and kids get mean, and it just, it's the easy thing to tag along and start, And
then if you react, then it's over.
Well, and then it's, they're making fun of Oren. I can make fun of Oren to look cool. Maybe I can be creative and look cool. It's a vicious cycle, right? And I think it was just, to me, when I turned 13, I moved from my hometown 2000 school. We always lived there. My family still lives there. We moved to the regional school. So all of a sudden, from a class of 25 to 30 kids, you now have 200 kids. And what ended up happening is it opened so much opportunity where now you can meet new people and you can make new friends. You got to remember, you're not driving.
So you're out of a whole different group and a whole different hierarchy.
And it was wild because, you see, so I was a DJ when I was a kid. So at 12 years old, I got into, back then, Napster and iMesh, and I used to find all this music. And my sister at 16 was actually a DJ for the municipality. So when people were doing their weddings and stuff, the cheaper options was to rent the municipal service for DJ. Right. And I was always the young kid that would hide behind my sister, and I was actually the one giving her the music and telling her what to do. So I was the brain, but she was the face.
Gotcha.
And it got out, usually in the town where we grew up, at 16, you become a worker for the community like that. And it became kind of known that, hey, Oren is actually the DJ here, and I was one of the first ones that at a younger age got involved. And people started to favorite me, saying they want me as their DJ for events and such.
13 years old.
And even 12. Okay. But you know what? At 16, and I'm going back and forth all over my past here, but at 16 it became real, where I played a birthday party, and we're talking like it's super cool, under 18 club, 400 kids. And it was one of my friend's birthdays, and I was the DJ. And all of a sudden comes the owner and says, hey kid, you're pretty good. I want you to come work with me. And I'm like, whoa, that's a big thing. And
I didn't know that, Oren.
He made me the resident of this club. And man, every Friday, there would be like 300 to 500 kids coming, right? All the drinking was outside. Inside is just Red Bull. Right. And yeah, I was the main DJ.
What were you hustling? Like, were you DJing like Israeli music or like
No,
like today's, like, you guys
New York
David
house.
Okay.
David Guetta for sure, Tiesto, a lot of psychedelic house, like acid trance, things like that. Israel is big, Infected Mushrooms, Kazi, all these guys. But my scene was always the melodic vocal house, progressive house. I love that. And the reality is, when you have to adapt, and the big thing about DJ, I think, especially at that point, again, not if you're Tiesto and you made it, but read the crowd, right? Read the crowd and feed them what they want. So as a DJ, I used to have folders on my laptop of rock, of salsa, of rap, R&B, of Israeli ridiculous music, and was never a big fan of the ethnic music, but again, that was, so you play what people want you to play.
Did you get hyper into DJing, where you would constantly all day just think about DJing, or what was it were you hyper focused on that?
I would say I was spending full nights on my computer downloading remixes and music, and then I will actually get the software and I'll try and make remixes. And don't get me wrong, so I moved to Canada when I was 16, and it's funny, again, summarize all my childhood into such short period, but so at 8 I got into hockey. At 13 I got into the national team with hockey. So under 18, and again, it's not Team Canada, right? But obviously we would go on IHF, and we were playing in Bulgaria. My first World Championship was in Bosnia. So you have World Championships, then you have Division 1, 2, 3 qualification. And through my youth, we actually started qualification, went to D3, went to D2. So it was pretty interesting. I was a leading scorer a lot of these times, but coming to Canada, different beast.
It's
right?
a whole different system of how to make the best players in the world.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And it was interesting because, so 13 to 16, I'm playing on the national team, and Jean Perron, he used to coach the Canadians back in the 90s, comes to Israel to run a hockey camp. And with his thick French accent, he's like, hey, you're pretty good, you should go to Canada. I'm like, well, I would love to, but how does that happen? And he was the one that didn't just say it, he actually put a plan together. And he said, listen, Notre Dame Hounds in Saskatchewan, best hockey school in the world. I'm gonna give you, my ward will probably get you a bursary with the school. And the federation agreed to finance a third of the project. Can your parents afford $10,000 to send you to Canada? And here I am, 16 years old. Now understand, I'm no longer bullied, right? I'm the DJ, I'm the cool kid, I have a lot of friends, I had a good life, I loved my quadding and off-roading in Israel. That's one thing.
Because you were still on the town up by the Lebanese border with 2,000
never
people.
moved. And it's, think about it like a small town Canada, but you see, Israel, what's one thing that is very interesting is the whole country is mapped for off-roading, and they have different colors of trails. Now, what happened is because of the past and the wars, basically tanks made those, trails everywhere. And then they had a ministry, that basically went and marked them. So one of my favorite things growing up is at 16 you can get a quad with a tractor license, right? So you can't drive, but you can get a quad. And a bunch of us farm kids, from the farm town, I wasn't a farmer, would go and would literally pack a bag and we would make a trip of 3-4 days sleeping in the nature and just quadding.
That sounds amazing.
It is amazing.
Okay, just for, one more. I have a question here. What was your favorite childhood memory?
Man, it's crazy how
You get one.
I don't know.
Which one comes to your head right now? Bam! Favorite childhood memory. Just spit it out. I'm ready for it. I can take it.
I think, my bar mitzvah, favorite, it's a tough one, I don't know that my brain is wired that way. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, it's crazy how I almost remember milestones and checkpoints, and I can't actually go back, to the I don't have that, I see people that I talk with and how vivid their memories are, and I'm like, I don't. I do think that definitely being a DJ, when you just drop the beat and 400 people go crazy, is and people literally admire you. I remember that one time, and I wasn't a ladies' man at no part of my life, but that I picked up a girl at the club, as the DJ. To me, I look back and it just, life happens and you can't go back in time, and you gotta be grateful for the things you've experienced, I would definitely say growing up in Israel, the off-roading was always a high part, and it's the adrenaline mixed with friends, and then you cook and make coffee out in the field, with people you love.
You guys make good coffee too. You guys are good at it.
Turkish coffee, right? I definitely position that up there, but then again, you can take that and go to the hockey side. And now you're 13 and you're traveling with your bros, and you're playing for the national team. And when you win, the Israeli anthem plays in foreign land. So, there are a lot of strong moments, being, and again, I was always in the leadership groups, so it was an exchange program at 16. And all of this is happening before I moved to Canada, right? I was actually part of an exchange group that went to San Francisco, and Jews from San Francisco came to Israel. And like you go through tryouts and they elect, the top 15 kids in the region to go. And that was an awesome trip, right? And again, meeting more people. But I find I was very blessed in how many circles I've had in my life. Usually people have their, hometown, school, maybe university, and work. Where to me, it seemed like hometowns. Then, you have your regional school, and then I had Canada, and then I had university, and then I had the army, and then I had hockey with Israel, and I had hockey in Maryland. Lots of them. And to find the right people along the way, that's precious, because there is something about calling someone that you haven't seen in many years and having that instant connection and just the love, right? The aura of the relationship that, again, we haven't talked in 5 years. I look, people say, I have so many best friends. I'm like, how good of friends are they really?
How good of friends are they? Where
I truly believe, I have a few in Israel, and then I have a couple in the US, and then I have a few now in Canada. And it's quite unique, in my opinion, how diverse is the friendships I have. And I've always been the independent kind of guy. My wife hates it, but I always say I don't miss anyone. I kind of live in the moment. And I left home at 16. Yeah. I left home at 16, so once Jean Pron put it all together, imagine at 16 dealing with a big decision. And we went the route of a coach, a life coach. Maybe they'll give me the wisdom. And then you ask all of your friends and everybody. And it's pretty heavy. Like, as kids, we used to go. Eilat is a fun city in Israel. That's a party place. That's kind of like Vegas of Israel. Eilat.
Not Tel Aviv?
Tel Aviv is very expensive. Eilat is the most southern point. It's right on the Red Sea, mad diving, mad clubbing, and it's a resort city.
Okay.
And we used to go as kids, and again, like I was always the organizer, right? So I'll organize the transportation and the hotels, and would go like 6 to 12 friends to Eilat to party and have a week, And during the last one, I remember that I was on that 16 age. I literally bugged all of the people that were important in my life, and it's like, what would you do? What do you think? And it got me to the point that, like, you really need to be able to sleep at night. And it's crazy because no one would want to say what you should do. But one thing that I just couldn't get off my mind is, like, if I don't take this opportunity to try and if I don't try and make it to the NHL, if maybe this coach is not crazy, maybe I have something that someone, and be the first Israeli. It's funny because when I landed in Canada, I'm like, what was this guy thinking? These guys are so much better. But, then I worked even harder to try and catch up.
Right.
And I, don't get me wrong, go to Notre Dame, play AA Tier 1 hockey, so the midget AAA, that's in Jordan Eberle, NHLers that we all know went there when I was school. But I realized, okay, there is a lot of growth to be done here.
And they've been growing since they were 5, and the best systems, like Canada still has the best system. America's second. But we still,
Listen, I think the hockey culture, growing up with it, one of my biggest weaknesses is the hockey sense. When you don't have NHL on TV, when you don't grow up with it all around you. One time the coach put me on a power play, and he's like, Oren, what are you doing? I'm like, Bruce, I don't know. No one ever taught me. No one ever taught me where to stand, And when you're 16, you're already, I won't say the prime of your career, but the coaches you work with want you to know everything. They don't want to teach you the trap like they taught you that when you were 11. And that definitely played against me. But listen, I was a 220-pound kid. I was very, very strong, fast skater, bomb of a shot. And it was hard to realize, okay, you played in the midget AAA tryouts and you were a Mon, call it the last cuts, or so I want to believe, and you never made it. And the following year, this was my 16 years old. And when I was 17, you go back home, you come back, and I stopped at Toronto and I tried to make AAA in Ontario. And I did. I got into a AAA team in Ontario. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going back to Saskatchewan. It just, the program and everything combined. And it's interesting, my first year in Saskatchewan was crazy because, again, talking about bullying, you're the kid from Israel. a lot of the people that I met never seen a Jew in their life. Some people ask me, how did you get here? Do you ride camels back home? And
Good question.
You know,
Good question.
man, like, I always say a lot of times the word anti-Semitism comes up, right? And I think there is a very big difference between real anti-Semitism to ignorance.
Yeah, you just don't know. There's. I bet when you talk to if you talk to a Canadian, there, you're like, "Do you guys ride moose?" Or something like that. But you don't take offense to it. It's just
No, it's almost a joke, right? Canada and the U.S. have it, where Americans think we live in igloos. So it takes a strong character, I think, to take someone's words and not translate them the wrong way.
Right.
I didn't think, like, people were like, because I was an only Jewish kid in a Catholic boarding school.
Right.
And like, people asked me about that. I'm like, you know what? I was an A student in Christian ethics. The Christian ethics teacher loved me because they wanted to know about Israel and Jesus, and all that. Which to me, I'm like, Jesus was a failing prophet. It didn't mean anything to us. We know he existed, and Christianity believes he's God. We believe that he was a failing prophet, right? But it was never in a bad way. And again, in the hockey dressing room, where boys can be boys and words can be said and all that, I think Notre Dame definitely developed me. Again, I left home at 16, to be very strong and capable and on your own. Yes, and Notre Dame is very unique in a way. Every Sundays they'll come into the room, and the room will probably be 2-3 times the size of this room, and you would have 4 men living in the room. And that dorm leader will go and do this. And if they find 3 fingerprints of dust in the whole room, you're on workout at 6 a.m. the following winter morning.
That's right. Discipline,
so,
baby.
Big time. And you play hockey 5 times a week, and you work out 5 times a week, and you go and eat at the buffet. Man, I grew 30 pounds my first semester in Notre Dame, but it was pure muscle. It was mind-boggling because I left Israel September.
So you were 220 in Israel, and you came in?
No. I was 190.
Okay.
And after 1 semester, I was 220 of muscle.
That's a lot of muscle, man. That's
Because
insane.
you work out, you eat, you play hockey, like the buffet. It was the ideal environment. I really do believe Notre Dame, and again, it has a very dear part of my development. It is. It puts you into a mini army routine as a child in Canada. And it's crazy because coming out of Canada, so after Notre Dame, I went to play hockey in the US. I made it to college hockey, but again, I didn't make D1. And unlike junior or kids hockey, I think you gotta be realistic. You're now 18 and you have your life in your hands. And to dream you're gonna make it out into the NHL from a Division III hockey school, you can keep dreaming.
You're getting delusional.
Yeah, and it was a great time, and college hockey was a blast, and I had a hell of a semester in Salisbury University in Maryland, but that was it.
So then you went from Canada, then you went to America.
Yes.
And how long were you in America for?
1 semester.
That's it.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Were you DJing at all?
No.
So you were fully hockey.
When I left Israel, I was always into my music, I was always into my technology, but it was just pushed aside and it was gone, right? It's like, okay, you're here, hockey it is. Yeah, and in college, I mean, I don't even think I played in the house parties. There was so much partying in college in 1 semester, I laughed because I'm like, perfect move from a Catholic boarding school without any alcohol to this.
America. Freedom, baby.
It was awesome. It was pretty awesome. And, what's interesting is then the army got involved and told my parents, hey, Oren does need to do his army time.
Yeah, can you explain that for everyone? As an Israeli, you have a duty.
It's conscription. So when you are, and again, you grow up like that. That's what's so hard to understand because, so when you are a kid, right, you always know of people that died in the army protecting the country. Right. Right now is obviously very sensitive times in Israel, more so than ever with what's going on.
When you were growing up, did you ever have issues with when you grew up, what was your, feelings towards the Lebanese, the Palestinians, and the Yemens, and Was there like a hatred towards them, or was there just they're all good by me, most of the...
I didn't know anything about the Yemens, right? I didn't even know anything about the Palestinians. But what I did know is the Lebanese, okay? Because they were borders.
Right.
Now, as farmers, it's actually an interesting question you asked, and it's very neat that I can answer that. You drive your quad on your orchards, farms on Israel side, and you see kids and Lebanese waving and smiling from the Lebanese side.
Right.
What would you think? Oh, these guys want to kill me? No, you see nice humans that want to live life. The reality is there is extremists, and a lot of times, unfortunately, in some of these places, the extremists take over. And I always ask people on this side of the world, if you had a gun pointed to your family head, and it's easier to say my head, I'm saying your family head, and you are told what to do, and if you don't do that, your family is not going to be safe. That's the decisions people don't actually understand. You might be a good person, but if a gun is to your mother's head or your children's head, unless you do something bad, well, now you have a very tough choice. Am I gonna go and try and fight my neighbors that know where I live and they're extremists, or am I gonna try and fight Israel, and hope that the Jews on the other side of the border are gonna save me and my family? And it's an insane decision. It's an impossible situation. And most people that don't live there have never realized it. So when people judge from outside, I'm like, have you ever stepped there? Then shut up and don't mind your own business, because people don't understand. That is an impossible reality.
This is what the reality is. There's a family, there's a man, and they have an extremist basically holding a gun to their head. And they're saying, you're going to help us fight the Israelis, or we're going to murder everything you love.
And whether it's a gun, whether it's a checkpoint, Lebanon has checkpoints. You're driving with your family, and the checkpoint is ran by Hezbollah, a terror organization. And if they don't like you because you said that you support Israel, they can execute you in front of the family. That's just the normal craziness that exists there. Now, a lot of the Christian Arabs, in Lebanon, hate Hezbollah. A lot of the people that disagree with it, but it's not something that you can say out loud, because again, they're extreme. They're not gonna come and fist fight you. They're gonna blow your house. They will shoot a missile to show that you don't do that. Now, that's the reality on the other side. And Israel is the Western country of the Middle East. And we've always had technology that they didn't, right? But at the core of people, and I think as a father, it's even easier to see. Your kids are born pure, and their smiles are pure, and they don't care if they're black or white or Asian or Arab. Your kids come with love. And it's such a humbling thing to see on your own kids, and there is something to be learned from it. Now, how does the Middle East reach peace? Man, that's above me and above so many. It's so hard.
Buddy, it's 3,000 years, right? Like, how do you solve that?
They say there is a saying that when they love their kids more than they hate us, there will be peace, right? But it's just so difficult. Because
but then it's almost on both sides too, right? Because there's like fighting hate with hate. It's like the Gandhi thing. It's eye for eye, and that's what it just. And it's understandable, because if someone attacked my family, it's like, fuck you.
And you're gonna
how dare you? Of course I would. I would. I'm telling you.
But now what happens is you killed new terrorists, but these new terrorist children are now hating you even more because you killed their dad.
Right.
Now, again, impossible situation. Take all of that and mold it into that you're an 18-year-old army soldier and you get a gun, and you need to make the decision whether you shoot back and potentially kill innocent people, or you let them shoot at you and potentially kill you and your friends. It's an impossible situation.
So this is where we're at now. So you're going to the army.
That's exciting.
And it was crazy, because coming from Canada, people looked at me, and again, we're talking in Israel in the army. So you have your draft day, and you're going through all these tests.
Right.
And people are like, whoa, where are you going? What special unit were you recruited to? Because I was a tank, right? And all these kids, like, dude, you don't see an 18-year-old fool. Like, I was a tank. So it was hilarious, because there were some very cool tryouts that I actually got involved. So the way Israel works, when you're 16, they bring you in for assessments. Understand how crazy that is. When you're at grade 10, they bring you in for your first assessment. Then grade 11 again. And they not just assess your physical, they assess your mental, they assess your social, like what family you came from, are your parents divorced, all these things that give you points or take away points. Everything brings to the day that when you go into the army, where are we going to put Ryan? Ryan is a nerd. He's very smart. Right? We want him in the intelligence. Ryan is a cowboy. He's crazy. He will be great with the machine gun.
Infantry, he's front lines.
so but again, everything is just built to that, right? Is that good? Is it my phone or yours? It is my phone.
That's all good. You just keep rolling.
So, what ends up happening is I went in and I was brought back from university. It was funny how things worked out because I wanted to finish my semester in the States, so I have a full year of university. That's gonna make a difference in my future because the army said you gotta come back. As I come back, the Israeli national team asked for me to play with them in a world tournament, right? And without my consent, after I left America and came back, now they postponed my army service 5 more months so I can go in that tournament.
Because that's good for Israel, right?
And I'm like, you guys didn't let me finish a second semester in university, and that second semester meant a lot. I'll explain later why. But you postponed my service, so now I'm in Israel, and I have 5 months. What am I doing? I became a water rafting instructor in the Jordan River. And that was, by the way, funny enough, there were hundreds of, maybe thousands of people a day, and a lot of Arabs, a lot of Israeli Arabs, a lot of groups from Arab villages that you take down to the water, that you need to go with kayak and they flip and you save them, and all these things. So when people say, Israel, it's a very democratic place. And people
social media paints a picture. And it's so wrong most of the time.
How things happen, it's just interesting. So I did my 5 months in the raftings and I go into the army. And because things got messed up, I didn't actually do my special tryouts. So you have tryouts that are pre-army, and then you can go to the elite forces. Then you have special forces, and then you have army. And others and all that, you have your Air Force and Navy and all that. But I ended up going into the army normally because I couldn't make a timeline to any of the elite tryouts. I wasn't in the country. And when they said, well, you should go try out, we can postpone your service again. I'm like, no, I already came back from the States. I want to go into the army. So now you're a part of a large group, I'm going to say 300 or so people that got drafted. And the first few days, they allow you to go into extreme tryouts. And during those extreme tryouts, you have all the assessors that evaluate.
Give me an example of an extreme tryout. So here you are, you're Oren Zamir, you're in the extreme tryout. What are you doing?
So you're in the army, in the desert, it's plus 35, and you're now crawling, call it 100 meters one way, right, on thorns and whatnot, you're all cut up, right, and while you get up, and again, it's probably 100 of you, so you're always, who is first, right, so then you get to the flag, and then you gotta run back. Now, the craziest thing the army does is they don't tell you how many laps you need to do. So they tell you, you just do your best. Now, understand the mental challenge behind this, right? What is my best? Okay, so are they measuring me for being the fastest? Are they measuring me for smiling while I'm doing it? Are they measuring me for pushing others and trying to be supportive of my teammates? What are they looking for? You have no clue, but you obviously want to impress. And it was funny because, again, physically, I was just so much stronger than anyone around me. And you know what's funny? Again, you're a kid and you don't really know what's going on, and I go on the bus to my hometown, and one of my high school friends from my hometown sits next to me, and she was in the army before me, and then she tells me a story. She's like, Oren, you sure made a name for yourself. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because you don't even know if you made the unit or not. She's like, well, I know some of the guys that assess things, and they're like, do you know an Oren Zamir from Metula? Because they knew she's from Metula. She's like, yeah. Who is this monster? Like, he's just insane. We again, because everybody come out of high school and fragile, and there's no hockey in Israel. Canadian kids are strong. Don't get me
strong.
wrong. You have Israelis.
They're kind of preppy and they're strong.
Israelis are healthy by nature, but their sport of choice is soccer. It doesn't develop muscles. Basketball maybe a bit more. Canadian, if you look at the gym culture and the hockey and lacrosse and rugby, they're all like, I need to be very strong.
Yeah.
Dude, one of the strongest people I've seen in the Israeli army was an American football player that made it to the volunteer in the army. So when you think about these things, it did play in my favor. And sure enough, I made it into special ops. So I wasn't in the elite, but what's funny is the elite...
One below, right?
The elite forces do their basic training with the special forces as part of the normal army. And your rights are next to them. And when I was with them, after I got injured in the army and got out, that was my end. Nothing heroic. I look at it as a blessing. I was in the army for 17 months. I blew my shoulder.
How did you blow it?
Was urban fighting, it's tight spaces. It happens 3 times. And usually when you get injured in the army, you're out of combat because you're a liability. But again, mind over matter. I was just so focused. I would literally push my shoulder back to place.
Did you just pop out?
At hockey in Canada, I had 5 dislocations. I had a surgery. And then after the surgery, that's what I told the army, that I'm good because I had a surgery. But the reality is, between that surgery and me going into the army, I dislocated again, which ruins the surgery. And now you're kind of like a Band-Aid. So I probably had 6 more dislocations before I went into special forces. Now, no one knew that. Right. So when a normal person sees you dislocate your shoulders, they're like, holy crap, because it's painful, but it also looks very odd, right?
It's not in the right place.
There's no blood, right? You can't really understand things. But to me, I was just like, I'm fine, because I was so scared to get admitted out of my unit. You made it to your unit, you have your crew,
that's your band of brothers.
And you don't want to leave, right? So twice I dodged a bullet, and even though I dislocated my shoulder in the army, I managed to come back, which is not normal. But the third time, again, it's funny. Imagine the door frame. So there is an exercise when they throw a grenade into a room and the whole crew, which is 20 people, need to evacuate the room within 3 seconds. So obviously very aggressive, get out, right? And as I'm running out, I got stuck shoulder width in the frame. That's how big I was. My shoulders, imagine like you're running and both shoulders hit both sides of the frame and you're like, Vook. And someone kicked me from behind, again, instantly, right? Just get out of here. And I fell with my hands forward and my shoulder popped. I didn't think much of it. So we go to the hospital, and my officer, and in the army you have distance, right? Your officer is not your body, you're in training. In war, that's different, but the distance in the army is something also remarkable. It's like you are always under, you're subordinate. You cannot talk up to your officer. It's not
very strict.
Because at the end of the day, you can only have one person calling shots in war. If everybody calls shots, you're going to have a big problem. So whether 100%. You agree or not, that's why refusing an order in the army is as severe as it gets, right? So here comes, and again, you're in advanced training of the special forces, and this guy comes to the hospital with me. And when I say this guy, my officer is 3 years older than me. He went to officer school, again, a bit more diehard than us at that point. And he tells the doctor, no, this is Oren, he's fine, he's gonna be good. And the doctor looks at him and he's like, no, this is no good. And I'm like, what do you mean, doctor? Like, I've had that before. And he's like, no, this time. And I'm like, what happened? And apparently when I fell, the impact, my shoulder bone, 30% of my bone broke. So it's no longer a dislocation. I actually lost 30% of that round bone was gone. So the only way is surgery. And now you're on 6 months, of leave. And it was crazy. Again, I was a hardcore soldier. The army loved me and I loved the army, the adrenaline. Man, I was the machine gun guy. So, to have 600 bullets, and you're in the desert, you're shooting at targets. I always say I got the best training. I never had to kill anyone. And, I haven't seen battle. I haven't seen all the heroic stuff, but the training that they prepare you for. And what happened was super interesting because I got sent to a questioner's course. And questioner's course, basically interpreter's course, is the only place in the army that they take 1 or 2 people from each unit and they teach them Arabic and they teach them how to extract information in the field.
You went there.
And when I was injured, that's like, you only get a couple people, but my unit really loved me and said, instead of Oren just being useless while he's waiting for surgery, let's train him in that. And it's like a couple months course, you know, and it's interesting because you have literally the best of the army, and they come to this course and they start the course by saying a good Arab is, and again, just macho soldiers, you know, warriors.
A dead Arab.
And
yeah.
the instructor is like, stupid. A dead Arab will not help you and not talk, right? And just starts shattering your perception. And they teach you about their culture and about their language, and they teach you about all these things.
Did you find that interesting? Did you like find some really wonderful parts of it?
How can you not, right? You live around these people.
But did you see the beauty of it, or did you see, like, did you get to see both sides?
It's very tough to call it beauty, because you need to realize that the culture difference of what we know to what they live by is very different. Would you find it very beautiful if you knew that your woman has to be covered head to toe? You know, like, it's not necessarily a beauty thing. It's more as like, that's how they do it. You know, they respect their elderly, big time. That's something that they respect their elderly, you know, the smart ones, the wise ones, but they were teaching us about all these things. And, you know, after that, funny enough, I get out of I get dismissed from the army until my surgery. So now I got that course. I had 12 plus months of very good training, you know, and again, like part of the training, you would navigate for 20 kilometers at a time in the desert. You know, you have to memorize your route, you and one more person. Extreme things that make you a very strong human, mentally, physically. And all of a sudden, I'm out of the army, and I hear about this opportunity because I'm like, well, frick, what am I going to do? I need to go to university, right? And I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't have hockey. It's not like I'm going to have a scholarship of any kind. And what am I going to do with my life?
So I tried to wait, how old were you when you left? So you're 21?
20. I got back to Israel around just before 19. August 2007 was when I got drafted. Gotcha. And my birthday is September, right? And after, you know, that whoopsie, I started thinking like, okay, let's go to university. And that, remember I told you about the full year, that they didn't let me do a full year of university in the States?
Right.
The Israeli university says, oh, you only have one semester. If you would have had 2 semesters, a full year, we would have transferred everything over. Because you have one, you need to do grade 12 again. You need to do the Israeli SATs, and nothing transfers over. I'm like, what? So I was in a point that it's pretty simple decision. Find a way to pay for very expensive education abroad, because if you have one more semester, you saved a year and a half of your life going to the garbage, or go to grade 12 and all that again.
Right.
So that's when I realized I need to make money. No hockey, you know, how do I get out?
EJN's over.
Yeah.
Hockey's done. Army's out. It's hustle time.
Well, and you know what? I heard it was 2008, and I heard of a guy that made 6 figures from Israel, came to Canada, made 6 figures knocking doors. And I'm like, that's impossible. That's impossible. The world economy was collapsing in 2008. You only hear of tragedies. Sure enough, small world, you know.
What was that
guy is Shalev Nemenov, and his little brother is my hockey goalie. We play hockey together, right? I, at that point, had another hockey team that I actually was the GM. It was never done in Israel. It was a Canadian-style hockey team in Israel. You know, bring the beers, and actually more of a men's league. You know, recruited a lot of the OGs that were out of the game. We're in the dressing room, and I hear Shalev's little brother Eden talk about how Shalev did so well in Canada or the US making money. And I'm like, that story is real? Because I heard about that story a week ago, and I called bullshit. I'm no way anyone made that money. And I'm like, Shalev? Dude, you gotta connect me with Shalev. Like, Shalev and I played hockey together. That's a guy I can trust, right? The human factor. I'm not gonna guess. Shalev tells me, Oren, it's a hard job, man. You're not a salesman. I'm like, Shalev, I would work so hard. I need to make $30,000. I need to, you know, and it was so crazy. And he told me, go down to the States, get involved with, you know, those Dead Sea products, learn a bit about sales. And the product was shit. You know, the price was so high, and I just hated it. And luckily the door opened, and it was, you know, I think it was a couple weeks or maybe a few weeks into the summer program, and here I am. They allowed me to join. And, you know, my first year was such a roller coaster. The first 2 weeks, I knew nothing, right? I studied for 3 days. I locked myself in a room. The commitment to just educate yourself about something is quite important as a foundation. That doesn't mean you're going to succeed, because after that, I went out and for 2 weeks, I got my ass handed to me on a plate. People were making fun of my accent. People were slamming the door in my face. People were telling me, get a real job. But none of that mattered, because I'm like, I don't have an alternative. I need to make $30,000.
There's The Rock, and there's the Hearts Place, and there's Oren right there.
Well, do you want to go and do grade 12 again? Do you want to do the SATs? So I'm like, make that work. And magically, something clicked, and it was my third week, and I sold like 7. And at that time, 7 was about $3,000. And I'm like, holy crap. And that push, that momentum, that confidence boost ended up leading to me selling 16 the following week. No one was selling 16. So all of a sudden, the kid made a name. And, I called my parents in Israel, and I'm like, Mom, Dad, how much money did you make this month? And I'm like, I just made $8,000 this week, and like just going crazy, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my head down. And Shalev did a very big solid for me, where he comes and says, Oren, what's your dream car? And I'm like, dude, he's like, if you wanted to buy something, what would you buy? And I'm like, a Toyota Highlander, And I wanted that because it was an SUV, a big vehicle. Toyota from Israel is the reliable thing. And sure enough, he advanced me money because he saw where I'm headed, and he advanced me money to buy the car. And he knew me from home. He knew I'm good for it, but he literally...
He gave you like 30,000.
I think it was just shy of that. And you know what? He made me even more committed that I have to earn and continue to smash it so I can actually pay him back and whatnot. And my first summer, in 4 months, I made $62,000. I paid off the car. I got rid of that Highlander. I ended up moving to an Audi A6. I always loved my cars. And I went to school in U of A. And I got my semester out of the way. And I needed 2 semesters abroad, And then I'm like, well, now what? And I'm like, Mom, Dad, I think I should just stay here, and I can do this as a summer job, and I can go to school, and I'll get my degree, and if things continue this way, I can probably retire by the time I get my degree and come back home, and life happens. And then I got into management, and it was 2010 that I made just over $190,000 managing a team, and again,
managing it. Oh,
I led a team, and I sold quite a bit, and it was just like, holy crap, right? And that's when I bought my first house. It was 2010 that I made good money, and again, my mindset was not, okay, how do I blow it, right? I didn't spend that much more on a different car. I always change cars. It was every year, but I bought my first house at 2010, and it was like a 20% down payment, on a $390,000 house right here in Hazelden, 99th Street and 69 Ave. I still own it, right? And what I did was, again, I say comfort before success, or success before comfort, right? And I was always success before comfort. And here I had a 4-bedroom house, and I basically I renovated a basement, which increased the house value, and I rented the basement, and then I had 4 bedrooms. I took the master and I rented all 3 bedrooms, so I was living in my own house, making money living it, but now I own it versus paying rent. And that was the beginning, of my real estate assets, like that first year dominating. Again, I sold over 200 alarms that year, right? That's right there is over 6 figures. And then I developed a very strong team. So yeah, that was the beginning of, my leadership, I guess, career as a area manager in the alarm industry. And from there, rest is history, you can say. It just, things kept coming. And, every year I put more and more. And one thing I learned in business school was opportunity cost. And I found it funny because I was spending $15,000 a semester for tuition as international student. I was spending probably $10,000 in rent, all these expenses. And that's when I realized, like, you know what? instead of doing 4 months of work and 2 semesters, why don't you just change it to 1 semester, and then you can do extended season and you can work longer. And I went.
How old were you when you bought? So, just to get some like time, so you buy your first house in Hazeldean. How old were you?
21.
Holy shit, crazy.
Yeah.
And then, when did you start taking like door knocking full time?
The first year that I made 60 grand, again, my eyes were on the goal, and the goal was to get that 1 semester. So if you do go back to Israel, you don't need to do grade 12 again, right? My second summer, I came in, and again, now I recruited, and we did 1,000 accounts with a group of 8 of us. It was unbelievable. But I made $190,000 in 5 months, and that's when I'm like, maybe I should really consider milking this, because like, you know, a lot of people go to school and the question, you can't ignore the question is, why are you going to school, right? I literally like to ask people, if you had all the money in the world, would you go to school? And some people tell me, of course. I'm like, okay, well, clearly, no.
You're an academic.
99% of the times, people just don't have a clue what they're talking about. They haven't done their own goals. They haven't done their own planning. They haven't dug deep enough to understand what fuels them, right? If you want to be a doctor and your goal is to save people's life, you better go to school, because otherwise you better not touch anyone. If you want to be a lawyer, you need school. If you want to be a businessman, what are you going to school for? What are you going to school for? That's what I learned in door-to-door. You are learning so much business on door-to-door. You know what I did? Every person I sold, I'm like, so what do you do for a living? Every business owner, I asked them, tell me a bit about your business. Because they love you, you love them, right? And you get to learn, and they respect you. They want you to hear their wisdoms. And I was doing that left, right, center, right? I was dominating in sales, and I was learning about the world. And I'm like, this is way better than business school. When I was in U of A business school, I had 5 professors, or really 1 professor. The rest of them had masters. They weren't even PhD. And out of 5 of them, only 1 ran a business. Right. I'm like, how
doesn't even make sense?
I'm like, how do you teach me textbook business where I was in the field managing dozens of sales reps? Your theory doesn't work. It might work on a textbook. It doesn't work in the field. And that's when opportunity cost kept moving. And again, to make my parents more so less concerned, I'm like, I'm just going to continue doing 1 semester at a time. But I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars in 5-6 months, you know.
I have a question now. So you're 21 or 22, you're making your couple $100,000, and you just said you need to know what you want, the goal. Because like, you go to be a doctor, you go to doctor school. So now you're obviously an entrepreneur, but you clearly have a vision, right? Schooling's coming second now. You know this is very profitable. What vision started to like percolate now? Now you're seeing the potential here. When you're like, oh my God, this is where I can go with this.
You see, seeing a potential means you are floating. Okay, a lot of us in life float, and don't get me wrong, we live a great life. You know, with Western civilization, it's very easy to float because most likely the stream is gonna take you to a good place. You know, floating means you're not waking up in the morning knowing where you want to be 5 or 10 years from today. And there is a big difference between finding a place that you can make good money to finding a place that you can make good money with that commitment to a goal that you already had. And when I was a kid, I think everybody have trigger points, just so you know. My mom and her brother got into an inheritance fight once my grandma passed away. And for 10 years, our family separated. It was nuts. My mother's brother, my uncle, has 4 kids. We have 4 siblings in the family. After growing up together, because of inheritance fight, which is a tragedy that your grandma dies, the family split. And I haven't seen my relatives for years, and anger and hate. And I said I would never want money to be a reason for issues within my family. At that stage, somewhere, I made the decision that I need to make sure that I have enough money that no matter what, if someone dies, I can be like, sisters, I love you girls. Don't worry about my share. Just the trauma that I saw. I'm like, oh my God, life is about people, health, and money. And if you put the money ahead of the people, you fail. Because what's the real purpose of life, right, is to live. And if you don't have your health, it's very hard to live. Let's just face it. And money doesn't always fix it.
And when you're sick, what do you want to do? What's the most important thing?
You just want what?
To get better.
Yeah.
And when you're healthy, what do you want to do? Take on the world.
And you know what? I always say, again, sweat it out, right? Drink a lot of water. That's how I was raised, you know.
Yeah.
Not all these medicine and things make you weaker, but I'm a big believer. My mom was very athletic. She was a record swimmer in Israel at one point. Again, just the way I was raised. But the point is, when you have very important people in your life, and then they're gone for whatever reason, what's the reason worth it? So the easy way for me to look at it is like, I just want money to never be a reason for me even to have the need to argue over inheritance, to fight. Let them have it. It's sometimes better to be better to be smart than being right? The right thing to do is to split the inheritance this way. But the smart thing to do is to stay family, right? To have the loved ones that you want in your life to stay there. And it's interesting because a lot of times people say don't do business with family. I disagree. I
completely disagree.
Love doing business with my family.
What other point would there be?
And my friends and people that I love, because let me tell you what, you have to come into anything with a win-win-win ideology, the triple W ideology. If it's a win for the person I'm dealing with, and it's a win for me, and it's a win for the greater good, whether it's the community, the output of the company, the people that get inspired by our success, well, that's a healthy, positive relationship.
Yeah, right.
Why would I not want to do it? Now, the reason you won't want to do it is because you have a messed up family, because you might have friends that are not like-minded, which is fine. You always have the choice to get to a point and then say, hey, we need to part ways. Now, in reality, not always both sides see eye to eye. And sometimes the one side would feel betrayed, would feel cheated, and that's when it gets really hard. But then you have the choice whether you're gonna stand strong and force your way, or say, I love you as a person, I just want us to continue a relationship. I'm telling you, this is really bad for both of us future. Do you want the business? How about you just take the business and run, right? There is ways to solve things if you really wanted to solve them.
Right.
But to not even attempt to have some of the greatest relationships of your life involving what you're doing for a living.
And who do you want to succeed? I want to succeed the people that I like. I want the people that I love and care about. I want them to succeed.
And who do you trust?
Yeah, like who else would you want to succeed? I don't want some random stockbroker to win. I want my people to win. I want my people to win.
Yeah,
that's what I care about.
And
Who am I going to invest in?
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Right? If you can win with your people, right? This is where, when I look at my career, and again, how I parted ways from Fluent and how things ended, and there was so much I learned, right? Life, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. You have to always have that perception. What could I have done better? And if you couldn't have done anything better, then why sweat it? You had no choice. If someone else's actions impacted you negatively, you have a choice, okay? Did that person provide me with any value until now? Whether it's money, whether it's education, whether it's experience, whether it's fun things, right? Okay, he made his choice. Do I control his brain?
I have a question here. So you said you had a bad relationship there. Was that one of the lowest points in your business or in your I guess business?
You know what? It's I don't know what's lowest points. I think at that point, when I parted ways from Fluent, right? We're talking 2021. I've been in business, if you may. I've been an entrepreneur within an organization for 12 years, right? I own 10 houses. I've had other businesses. Did it hurt? Absolutely. By hands down, Fluent sales, commission, eat what you kill, all that was by far my biggest income. Like quadruple what other things would have made. building a business is very hard, right? Doesn't mean you can't succeed at it. It just means when you have something that feeds you, and again, when you do good in commissions, right, it's so easy to scale it because all you need to do is do the same, bring other people to train. So it's possible. Where you work for an hourly wage, you have a box. Your box might be very comfortable, but you have a box. Even if you're making $100 an hour, right, that's about $200,000 a year. Well, if you wanted a car that cost $1 million, how do you get there, right? Without taking loans, right? So when you're an entrepreneur, and that's what's unique about commissions and sales, even though you're not necessarily the business owner, it's very much scalable. You can duplicate and grow it and keep making more money. So the biggest pain, I can't say a low moment, you know, because again, we lived in a very nice house. I luckily wasn't forced to sell. I managed to move things. I was prepared. I had the banks on my side. Like, you know, I'm very proud of how I went through this hard time. But the biggest struggle I've had is that someone that I saw as one of my best friends that was on my wedding party is literally cut out of my life. But this time it's not because of inheritance or it's not because of someone else. It's because I don't want him in my life.
Right.
What I have seen, I never want to see again. Right. I have seen things and behavior that I just would never want to potentially rub off on my kids. You know, and this is a person that is incredible and taught me about real estate and taught me about the hustle and taught me about sales and built an opportunity for me that was blessing.
Yeah.
But on the same token, the way things ended, and you know, some people say money got to your head. Some people say, oh, things change. I believe that your heart is where your heart is.
Character's
and,
character, man.
And people don't change. People just pivot a bit, you know. And some of the things I've seen, and again, never go by he said, she said. You know, always look for your own facts. I call it caveman media. When people look at social media, when people watch the news, where is the information coming from? Caveman media means I saw it, I felt it, right? If I'm in the cave and a lion attacks me, there is no newspaper to read that my neighbor got attacked by a lion. I can understand directly what just happened, learn, hopefully I survived, and move from there, right?
Right.
So my experience, I'm not talking about what other people saw. I'm not talking about what other people felt. I'm talking about what I personally experienced.
Right.
And to feel betrayed to a point that, don't get me wrong, business has ups and downs, but our greatest glory is not in never failing, it's in rising every time we fall. And when you are a family, family sticks together. And when things go wrong, there is two ways to go about it. There is more than two ways, right? But one way is to do what's best for you as an individual and not worry about the rest. And the other is to actually worry about the rest first. Bring them all closer, telling them this is very tough. We are not doing as good as I expected. I am embarrassed that I promised you the world and potentially that's no longer exists. But let me tell you that I am here because I love you guys and you are more important than the money. And I want us together to find a solution that we can all walk away as family. And that goes back to that decision, you know. And what that did to me is it pushed me to develop a business with knowledge of things that I would never want to see around, right? It allowed me.
So you almost got like a third dimensional perspective.
You
now,
can
right?
almost dummy-proof the system that even if Oren dies, the structure is properly set and laid out that no one can come and screw Ryan later because Ryan had a change of heart, or sorry, Oren had a change of heart. If you learned from it, which I did, you know, so my low, again, it took me probably a month. And during that month, I'm like, man, what am I gonna do? I had my door-to-door experience, you know, I have my leadership experience. What does that mean in the real world? My car shop is not making me enough money to live. It doesn't make me money at all. It's a hobby. I love it, right? But it's hard. My other car shop is not making me money that I can live off. My restaurants, it's like we're in a building stage. My real estate is cash flowing, but this is still a fraction of what I used to make in my main business, right? And it's just a reality. And you can act a victim, and I just don't have in my life room for victims.
Yeah.
Some people are very sympathetic. I don't know. I believe in raw business. I believe life is not fair. You know,
It's
when
definitely
when people say, oh, this and that, I'm like, who told you life is fair? And I just, you know what? You gonna do whatever you decide to do. And at that point, I could have let the world collapse on me, or I could have just
done exactly what
Oren,
is
it's an
done.
impossibility for you. I guarantee you.
You know-
it's an impossibility.
and it literally, you know, it's that's why I'm like, now I'm just full of gratefulness because the situation and how sad the end was and how financially stressed I was, and to be forced for the first time in my life to consider selling some things that I've worked so hard to earn, like my Lambo that I bought in cash was a trophy.
Yeah, woo!
That was, you know, people don't know. Oh, he has a Lambo. Man, I didn't knock doors from 2015 to 18. So I dominated as a rep, I dominated as a manager, I dominated as a regional. 2015, I became more of, okay, you're looking over multiple teams and your job is just to push everybody, and you made it, right? But I took, I think it was more than 50% pay cut to have comfort before success. That's just the way, which I admire. That's the way the business developed. You know, the biggest earner at my time was the manager that was leading from the front and crushing it. Bigger than the regional, bigger than the owner at times. And dude, when I made $500,000 in 6 months, knocking doors, you know, leading from the front line, creating 4,000 or 5,000 accounts, it's powerful. You know, it's powerful, and it's good that gets rewarded more than the CEO salary or whatever. Sure, you have equity opportunities and things down the road for, you know, the senior execs, but at that given moment, I was the highest earner in the company. And what happened is I've never seen failure in my door-to-door life. I always kept growing. In 2015, 16, living the dream, you know, I got married, we had a kid, and 2017 was the first year that I went down in production. And I looked at my wife, and I'm like, baby, I don't know how to fix it from here. The only way I know
How does that feel? Because it seems like if you can't keep going up, that must fuck with your head a little bit.
It's not, you know, but again, it wasn't me not going up. And, you know, there are better leaders than me that could have probably fixed it in different ways. But to me, I'm such an absolute person that I was like, the only way I know I can impact so many people under me is go back to lead from the front. And when you look at, again, army, generals, officers, a lot of them are in the front. They're not in the office. They're not. And you know what? That's exactly what I did. And after that decision is when I told my wife, baby, I don't know what else I can do. And, you know, then I went and said to myself, well, if you hit your goals, because you're going away from your family for 4 or 5 months at this stage in life, you know, I always dreamed of having a Lamborghini. And I said, if I come back and we hit that 6,000 funded good accounts, I'm gonna buy it. And you know what? It was insane how good that year panned out. What happened, just so you understand, and that's why I felt like I have to be in the field, is my vets, my right hand people started telling me things like, Oren, you're not in the field anymore. You don't know what it's like. The market has changed. Excuses and victim mentality. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna shut everybody's mouths and no one would be able to say anything. And that's what happened. I outsold 95% of my region while running the region, while doing everything else I already had on my plate. And I had my best year personal sales per month. And how can someone now go and say, excuse me?
I got a question, man. What fucking drives you? Like, I've known you when I knew you 10 years ago, and the drive, the ambition, or the will, like, there must be, like, what's the why? Like, I built my dream, like, my very small accomplishment. I built a house in Ecuador. I had a huge why for me. I did my 20,000 hours in the pipeline with people that I'm not really fans of, you know, and I built something that was really important to me. And it was the greatest moment of my life. I built it. I helped build it. I was there brick by brick. I had a why, and like I could go through endless suffering, and now I'm basically can live the rest of my life there. But your why must be massive to keep you pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and then taking everything around you and pushing you. And then you have all these shoulders. You got a family, you got a business, you got responsibility, and you're just like, put more on. Got bigger shoulders. I got dislocate this fucker. You know. What keeps driving you towards that? What's the goddamn why? Is it Shangri-La? Is it a golden city? Is it a golden Saudi Arabian Bugatti?
No, not at all. You know, it's funny because people from outside have no clue of the inside. And I think some people probably assume I'm way richer than I am. But to me, and again, I'm very analytical, I always said, remember how I went back to my mother and her brother in the fight, and then Canada did help me put the pieces together. But if you fail to plan, how do you expect to succeed in execution? And when I say plan, it has to be very specific. And I knew that if I had about $30,000 a month, and I already had most of my things that I wanted, I can live freely a very good life. And when I say live freely, is I have the choice whether I wake up in the morning and go to work or not. I have the choice of what my day looks like. So then when you take that 30,000, you got to work it backwards. That's $360,000 a year, right? Well, $360,000 a year is net. Well, you need to pay taxes. So at that level, that means you actually need about 700,000, right? About 700,000. Okay, how do you get to a point that you have $700,000 a year in passive income without forcing yourself to work? Well, you need, at a conservative investment, 10 million, 7% return will get you your 700,000. So when you ask me about my why, that's, okay, that's the plan. But why?
Why is that the plan?
Yeah, why is that the plan? Because even if you don't want to wake up, you're still going to wake up, and you don't have a mind designed to chill. Like, I don't have a mind to chill, and your mind must be firing.
But you have the choice. And you have the choice, and that choice is very, very precious. And we live in a very lucky side of the world, call it, where we have these choices.
Super grateful.
And we can decide about that. Now, the richest man I know is worth about $250,000 outside of Edmonton. He sanded his log house a week, like he rented a Zumba, and I'm like, that's such a hard job. And he tells me that the work is good for the soul when you wanna do it, right? And I'm like, sure, I don't see myself sanding a mansion, I'll tell you that much. But the point is, right, the why is, listen, I wanted, and that's where maybe I failed in my early stage, because my goal was always to retire by the time I'm 30. And now I'm 35. And I think I'm back on track. But when I talk about retirement, what is retirement? Is being there with your kids whenever you want, right? To have all the time in the world to do. My oldest is 7. I still really want to have that freedom by the time he's 10. I was always set on when my oldest is 7, I don't want to miss anything. And you know what? I don't have to miss anything anymore. I can decide as a business owner and play my cards so I'm always attending. But I want to be able to do whatever I want. And that whatever I want goes again. Remember how I said life is about people/experiences, health, and money, right? Well, if you don't have the money, it's really hard to live and have the fullest of life with the people you want to have.
Right.
And that's my why. I want to enjoy life. I want to experience what life has to offer with the people I love. And that's where the numbers simply made sense to me. I'm like, if that's the amount of wealth you would have, and you would strategize yourself properly, you would be able to live and enjoy life with the people you want. And that's the why, and it would never change. I don't want to have
10 million is the why, and then are you done? Are you going to close shop, or are you going to have one of your generals take over?
Listen, I think to have someone take over is a very challenging situation. You see it all the time when fathers give businesses to their kids and things don't work the same way. It's, is it possible? I never close doors, right? But all I can tell you is that I know that when I reach my end goal, I will not be willing to screw everybody around me in order to just kind of scrape by and get to where I needed to be. Because there is winning and there is team winning. And if you win, and the people that trusted you and followed you are winning with you, and know that even through the hardships and the final moments, you had everybody in the family in your mind and you took care of everybody, that's priceless. That's a legacy. And that's something that you can hang the boots later and enjoy the idea and the results of what you've done. Versus how some people make these mistakes at the end, and just throw the family out, throw the friends out. To me, nothing is worse than that. When I look at my mom and her brother, that's people, that's relationships, right? Why would you later throw relationships and people out the window versus making the extra effort to make sure everybody are looked after within reason, right? People are, listen, social media, right, and all that created people that live in a bubble. I will be the first one to stand someone in the face and be like, you live in a bubble. Listen, you don't have to like what I have to tell you, and I am not going to risk my family because of your bubble. This is the bubble, and this is reality. You can join me in reality, and I would still take care of you, or if you live in a bubble. Don't get me wrong. There is always perception, right? But like I said, I sleep good at night. I believe that good people exist. I believe that it's important to provide a healthy, positive environment and example. When I look at mentors, you have all these mentors out there that charge you $10,000 to come to a seminar in Miami. I'm like, if you're so rich and successful, why do you need my $10,000?
That's a good point.
Right? Why do you need me to pay you instead of just wanting, as you are a good person, to give some of your time? Now, if you don't want to give your time because you finally got to a certain point that you can spend your time with your family and loved ones, then kudos to you. I respect that, and I don't expect you to train me. But if you are giving me your time and you're putting a price tag on it, that's not my type of mentor. A mentor, like I said before, is someone that is somewhere you want to be. Well, there's lots of rich people around us. Number two is someone that got there in a way I can mimic, right? I didn't have rich parents that can just give it to me. Right. So now, if that's how someone took $500 million and made it to $1 billion, well, that doesn't help me because I have zero. How do I get there, right? But the third thing and the most important thing, and I think people forget, and it's truly, in my opinion, the most important thing is our values, our ethics, right? What are your kids growing up on? What are your friends and neighbors and surrounding know about you and see, right? What kind of a man you are? There's so many good, strong, ethical, and solid business people to admire. Why not provide that? Go back to win-win-win, the triple W, right? Build something amazing that the kids in your neighborhood can say, I want to work for that company. Right. I want to be like this guy. I'm inspired by this guy. It's funny how when I drove the Lambo in the winter, Ian, one of my friends, was saying, man, you're such a trendsetter. And to me, it was a no-brainer. I'm like, it's an all-wheel drive car. I'm away in the summer grinding and working. Of course I'm going to drive it in the winter.
Damn right.
But people looked at it.
It's your fucking Lambo. You drive it the way you want.
Dude, exactly. And when you're in control, you gotta take control of life. That's the opposite of victim mentality. Every junction I enter, right, it's a four-way stop, and I want all stops to be available to me. I don't want to be forced down one way. I'm not floating and hoping the river gets me somewhere and I'm happy. I'm very planned. I know exactly where I want to be. Don't get me wrong, I will pivot. There will be shifts in the way. But the mind cannot give up because... And I'm not talking about, some stupid goal. I'm not talking about, if you want to buy a Lamborghini, okay, is that your end goal, right? It's a milestone on your journey.
On the grand empire.
So you can give up on things along the way. You can tweak things, but you need to know where is the final. And most people think it's always about money. It's not. Do you want to be married or not? Do you want to have kids or not? Do you want to have a boss or not? Do you want to decide when you work or not? Those are important decisions that people don't ask that mean the world. Because when you have these answers, if you are committed to them, you're now able to start evaluating what I should start doing and prepare a plan that will set you for success. And that is so important if I can teach people that. And I help, my own, obviously, workers and sales reps and whatnot. But when people don't have the time to give you, to assist you in bettering your life.
What do you think that is? Ignorance?
No, it's carelessness. They don't care enough about you. So now you gotta ask yourself, okay, I'm in it to win. I can take what I can take while I can, but at the end of the day, this is not my ideal mentor, because if shit hits the fan, he doesn't care for me personally. If someone doesn't have emotional involvement in you, right, it's priceless. If I had someone that started with me at 18 and by 30 he's retired, do you understand what he's gonna tell his grandchildren? It was that loud, blunt Israeli that put me in path, toward that. I'm forever grateful. Money doesn't buy that, right? If you don't have that fire, if you don't have that passion, then what are your objectives, right? And it's perfectly fine. Don't get me wrong, I own a big company now. We have a lot of sales reps. It's fine to have your objectives for you and the company, but are they aligned with the people that work for you? Right. Are you guys both winning together, or are you winning and he's getting farther from his goals because you manipulated him to do something he shouldn't have, right? And I think influencing people to do good is definitely something I take pride in. The plaque on this wall, if you look from Pinnacle, from my first year in alarms, is zero compliance. I was a top producer in an industry with a lot of shady people, and when I didn't know that's coming, I was like, wow, what a cool award that is. The cleanest salesman in the company, zero compliance. And that's how I want to do business, right? That's how I want to spread things. That's what I want when people talk about Horizon Energy. I want them to talk about the integrity. I want them to talk about people that worked with them, cared for them. I always say, would you sell that to your mom? Would you sell that to your family, right? If you don't, well, do what you gotta do when you gotta do it. But when people say do what you love, I say bullshit. Do what you have to do to get you to a point that you can do what you love doing. You worked in the pipeline, I'm sure, in very unhappy times, but you were strong mentally to get you because you had a vision that you executed. And how amazing was the execution?
It is the best feeling ever.
Because
it's the greatest moment ever.
No one did it for you. You did it. You went through the hardships, you went through the mental challenges, but you kept strong because you knew where you want to be and you made it there. Yeah. Not many people make it there. No. Now that takes a unique person. Again, it doesn't matter what is the vision. If someone can't look himself in the mirror and say, that's what I want, and start testing himself, that I have to earn that, I have to get there, and hold yourself accountable. And what's accountability? Accountability goes to discipline, right? And accountability goes to work. If you don't work, if you have no work ethic, forget it. Just move out. Go move. But when you have your discipline and work ethic, one thing that I'm a big believer in is you have to have your pillars. And most people forget about the pillars. What's the pillars? So when you have a plan and when you have goals, you have sacrifices. You're not very, very unlikely you're going to hit the moon without some sacrifices.
Oh, yeah.
Not knowing your sacrifices is a problem. Because if you don't know your sacrifices, right, well, when they happen, and they're going to happen, they're going to throw you off track. Oh, yeah. Because they're going to be tough. Pillars are the sacrifices that you are not willing to make. Think about that.
Interesting.
My only pillar in my journey, and still to today, was if someone is dying on me or very sick, I am going to put everything away and go be next to them. Time is not something we can get back. And if your family is sick or in a hard position, if you're not there to support them, the day will come, unfortunately, that they will be gone, and you will never be able to undo that.
True.
That was my only pillar. If
Do you
anyone,
have more now? Do you have more?
No, I have less. Why would you have more, right? Think about it. The only pillar that would have ruined my success, when people talk about luck, I was very lucky because no one that close to me got sick and was on a deathbed that I would have said, nothing is more important, I'm leaving everything. that ties to I skipped weddings, birthday parties, family events, you name it.
Guilty.
Of course.
Absolutely guilty.
But that's part of the conviction. But you do need to know what is your pillar. When people tell me nothing is going to stop me, well, that something might show up and it will hit you like a train because you didn't anticipate it and because you didn't actually think it through. My pillar, it hasn't changed, man. Now I have my own family, right? So the movement went, before it was my sisters and my parents, and now it's my 4 children and my wife,
And
right?
sisters and parents.
Yes and no. It's a hard reality, but I was told that before. You have your immediate family before your mom and dad and sisters when you are a family man, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy to admit, but again, I'm just a blunt brute, and I'm like, when you think about it right now, right? If you have your 4 children and wife about to fall off a cliff, right? And again, that's insane that I'm thinking about it like that, but I think it vividly paints it, right? But then you have your parents here. Who are you gonna save? Who are you gonna? You can only, right? So this is your family. This is your future. And again, I'm not justifying it, right? Like they lived a good life. No, but this is your family, and that's where you put your focus. And that's what every morning I wake up and wonder what my kids are gonna be like, and what my kids see, and what am I giving back to my kids? And I think that's, when, again, you tie it all to the why. I want to live life in a certain way. And the journey is tied to the end point. You can't just ignore it because, like I said, you have to follow ethics. And to me, I'm so privileged that I got into solar when I did. And I managed to have the past I did and the support from my wife that I did. And everything lined up, because man, we've done something that was never done before. We've installed 600 solar projects in literally 13 months.
I have a question on that. Because you obviously you're turning into a dominant solar powered unit, right? What's your future goals for the solar? Is it to be the number 1 in Canada, number 1 in North
Western
America?
Canada.
Is it going to be in
Western Canada?
Western Canada?
We're probably going to capture that hill in a couple of years. We are flying, it was September that we were flown to Vegas by a distributor to RE+, Renewable Energy Plus. And it's funny because, again, we had our first install in June 2022. My first sales rep was in May 2022. Understand what we're talking here, right? May 2022. Our first install, maybe it was July 2022. By the end of 2022, we've installed 40 projects, which, don't get me wrong, is remarkable. If you look at my competitors and mom and pop shop and everybody, that's remarkable. We installed between, not even January, really, between May to November, we're doing 70 to 100 installs a month. It just went when the growth came, we didn't fear it. We embraced it. We knew what needed to happen, and we simply said, we're here to work. Man, I put more 14 to 16-hour days in Horizons than I've ever put anywhere. When I thought I can't work harder than I have for Fluent, I am so happy to prove myself wrong, and my heart is in it. I don't need to report to someone. I don't need someone else's approval. I feel so good about it. And when people tell you, don't try business, again, wrong advice.
Terrible advice. That is one of the greatest failures you'll ever have.
100%.
It's one of the greatest failures you'll ever have.
And the best advice you can have will actually prepare you for what's going to happen, maybe you can make it. But Horizon just took off, and again, I'm saying, so when we went to Vegas, we didn't know. This is September, right? But all I can tell you is all of a sudden, and this is nothing I've ever experienced, all of a sudden, my credit card gets swiped for $500,000 to $1 million per month. Numbers that I've never seen, right? And I carried it on my back. It was my own equity, my own credit lines, my own everything. So obviously I was very, very all in it, And my other partners, I always said, I'm never gonna lose my voting rights. I'm gonna be the dominant decision maker, so no one at my organization can ever do to others what I don't want to happen, what potentially happened to me, or how people felt. And that's my official statement. I would not lose ownership of that control. Now, if one day this becomes a public company, if one day an hedge fund or equity firm comes and wants to pay, like, I never close doors. But let me tell you, if the day arrives that I cannot be in control and I'm forced to do things that may or may not be in the favor of my people, I'm likely not gonna want to be here, right? Like charity trips, even though a lot of people think the charity trips and the volunteer and all that, oh, it's such a good cause. It's actually quite easy to justify it on the business side, right? It does give the company a good image. It's a write-off, this and that, right?
Yeah.
But to take care of your people and do things that are not conservative, that's a bit harder at times, to go and advance someone $30,000 like my original manager did because he bet on me. Board of directors and shareholders might not see eye to eye on that, right? To go and co-sign for one of your top managers, like, and again, those are things that were done for me in the past. So I never forget what happened to me, and I never forget, I never want to forget where I came from. And to me, it's always going to be about the people. And if we build it, and the people, right, we have two types of customers. You have our employees and staff and contractors, and then you have the customers on the other side. You take care of the people and you're gonna be fine. Every time we get a complaint, every time we get an issue, I still today, we've done over $50 million in sales, call the customers myself. I'm on the phone with them because I wanna hear if there is anything sketchy, if there is anything shady going on, if I need to make it right, and I will make it right. No matter what, sir, I want you to know we care, right? And that goes a long ways. I read an article about a very wealthy person that says, do what's not scalable, right? To call customers. I took our first 30 installs, I went knocking doors with our gift package to meet them, to ask them about their experience. I learned so much through doing that feedback, right? Because I know what I am hearing, I know what needs to happen, I know what...
Caveman Media.
You know it. I love that you remember that. But that's just it. So to me, Horizon is just, it's my real shot at making my vision and dream business come true. And that dream business does business in honesty. It does business with the utmost integrity. It does business with caring for clients and people. It does business where we strive for excellence, whether we sometimes, everybody fail, but what can you learn from it, right? And I am blessed, man. We had 23 people last Christmas party in December 2022. We had 115 in this building showed up last week, right? That's 115 that made it. We're close to 200 staff now between the installers and the corporate staff and the sales reps. It's insane. But again, as long as we stick to our ethics and values, and I would die, that's a mountain I will die on, when people, all my sales reps still have access to me, anyone in the company, I tell them, you have my direct cell phone, I don't want to be the stranger, feel free to reach out, even when I'm very busy, which is very often, I'll find the time, because you have to be a part of the team.
How does that, because obviously you have big shoulders and that people probably have to come and talk to you about many things. How do you balance that? With like family, which is here, and then you got your other family, and because I talk to a lot of business owners that are owners, they say like there's almost like a therapy session because you got to stroke ego. This guy's easy. You got these people that are kind of bickering. How do you manage with the family and work? Because there's only so much time you have 24 hours.
Listen, you gotta make sacrifices, and I think that right now I'm at the sacrifice stage.
Gotcha.
Even though I'm very successful, as some people think, in my eyes I'm not successful. I didn't cross the finish line. I'm not floating past my finish line that wherever I end is okay. I still need to play things right and make sure things happen so I will actually be where I want to be. And as long as that's my mindset, and again, I'm a big believer that you always have a decision. I married a wonderful wife and an even more wonderful mother. Dude, she does 95% of the heavy lifting. It's not even a debate. Like, we agreed on it, right? So, yeah, I make sacrifices. I'm here today, not just because of you, because I said, hey, even though the whole organization is off 23rd to the 2nd, this is my catch-up time, because finally I have some time that I don't have all the ongoing things that I can actually attend what I need to attend, right? So it's a give and take, right? I think the bigger we get, the more successful we're gonna be at finding talent. And talent comes with time. And I'm learning very quickly that there are really good people that are already with me that can take pieces of the machine, right? And right now, like I said, I'm working, man. I'm used to working 12 to 16-hour days, and I'm perfectly happy with it because we're building to a better place. And if in a year or two, I will have a capable, respected executive assistant, that people that go to her or him trust them the way they know they trusted me. And they know that if this is important enough, they will go to Oren right away. And if it's minor, they can make that decision. That's the type of balance that I strive to achieve, right? But right now, man, people text me at 10 p.m. and I'm still the same manager I was to you. I answer right away, you know.
Man, you're a killer.
It's a decision. And my wife doesn't always like that decision. And I am waiting, you know. I talked with a very wealthy man in BC. Told me three years ago, I had to answer my phone. I would go to watch my kids' hockey, but I would have my phone and I had to answer my phone. Now I go to my kids' hockey and I can decide to turn off the phone off completely, right? That's power. That's success. And, you know, I don't know many times, like that's the awesome thing about that magical time of the year, Christmas and New Year's, that I probably could, right? I still choose not to. I still want to stay on top of things. Like I tell my wife, baby, if I fall a day behind, it's not like tomorrow I got nothing going on. It's just now I have both days to tackle. So I'm in the mindset that, okay, just stay on top of everything. Don't dig a big hole, you know, so it's easy. And as time goes, you just find good people. And the right people would get you the right lifestyle. And, you know, you have to trust people. And it all ties back to the people. Have the right people with the right intentions. People will make mistakes, but as long as they grow from them, as long as together we have the integrity to discuss things, you know, that I don't need to second guess. When someone lies to me, it's game over, because whether they stay in their position or not, I lost the trust.
Right.
I would never trust them blindly. And when I start with people, I'm a believer. I believe in humans. I start with trusting them. Right? You don't start by doubting. You ask questions, you get familiar, you get to know one another, then they get my trust. I don't want to lose that, right? I want to be surrounded with people that feel they can be trusted and feel that they want to give their heart and put it out here and grow like that. And it is very rewarding to see that at Horizon. I think right now most people still know that I outwork anyone in the organization, and eventually the goal is for this to stop. But there gotta be enough good people to support the family and support what we got going on, that it won't be a cliff that all of a sudden people feel like, I'm neglected, I'm ignored.
Right.
I never wanna be that company. I never wanna be that person, right? I still, when people, Friday nights, it was a payroll error or they needed an answer about payrolls, they contact me, I usually answer right away. You gotta make people feel comfortable and cared for, right? And it's not just a mission. I think it's a lifestyle. It's just a decision. I value people. And again, what you want to put out there, right? What you put out there is gonna come back one way. And Jews believe our name walks ahead of us. One of my greatest achievements, you know, again, when I parted ways from Fluent, most people that were with me said, "You've never done us wrong." No, you know, most people said you've never done us wrong, and you've never lied to us, and that's to be ethical and to be able to, you know, be seen as the honest person in the industry. I think is very unique, and that's what I hope for.
That's badass. That is badass. Oren, this is an unreal podcast. I love this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, but eventually we're gonna be running out of battery life here.
And, you know, it's funny. I thought I'm gonna do a YouTube channel, and when you came and said that, I'm like, "Frick, this is better." You know, once in a while, just do something like that, so my kids can watch it one day, and someone else would edit it.